I'll be speaking about preconception, which outreach, and then I'll introduce two young speakers after. Okay, so let me start with that slide, which I want you to think about. Yeah. Okay. There is a link. Okay. Preconception for us, or rather me and maybe a whole load of people like me, although it means before pregnancy, I think I am, and the society or charities are defining it as before pregnancy, but we have a different timeline to the way I read, and correct me, Amanda, although I've said it before, that I think the timeline for the screening program is when the person has decided they're planning a pregnancy, because they have something called preconception care, don't they? You know, whereas I am going to talk about preconception, taking that much earlier when you get to teenagers and people of childbearing age who are sexually active. So mine is a bit earlier, even though they're not planning a pregnancy, although there are lots of unplanned pregnancies, but earlier. I think we should be taking that timeline even earlier. And there's evidence of that. But prior to that, I will show you about the family legacy, which we did, which involved preconception outreach, yeah? And I'll just show you a few slides, and some of you know about the family legacy movie. It was to raise awareness of sickle cell, screening, and myths. It's on our website, the Sickle Cell Society website. Just go to the search field at the bottom and put family legacy. We showed it at the Afro Hair and Beauty Show. These are just pictures, men. We went to barber shops, and they were quite cooperative. Those were screening bags that the screening used to do, and I told them all to put it around their necks, and they were quite cooperative. And similarly, this was another barber shop where I took the sides, and I'm asking, this was a Q&A. I fed them. They're all eating Kentucky Fried Chicken in the packet. So yeah, so they were all quite cooperative there. Another lot on the left, they were filling in the evaluation forms. That was at another barber shop. And we also did the outreach in family homes, because, screening sickle cell has a lot of stigma. So we asked some people, service users, especially if they'd host it in their house, and the film is projected. You can see the film projected on her wall, and we did the Q&A there. So lots of outreach. But I thought I'd give you some quotes these were things that people told me when I was doing outreach. You might guess the sex. I'm not going to say who. But there you go. I'm not straight. I go to the gym. He was called, his nickname was Firewood. Are you surprised? Yeah, and my immune system is high. So these were some quotes we got from early going to colleges, and the middle one was a barber shop, yeah? So there you go. Again, we did a restaurant, community. So it was a lot of outreach, which, we didn't define it to parents or whatever. It was just the community, so there would have been young people there as well. We did television shows talking about the screening. I was there with service users, etc. That was during COVID, online. So lots of things. So you might be wondering why more, why are we still advocating for preconception outreach? There's more awareness about sickle cell, but we need more because there's still a lot of stigma. Young people also know their status early now, probably because of the screening, the newborn screening, but people are more aware of their genotype. That came out in the preconception and focus groups I did. So yeah, they may benefit from the information. Lots of new research. These are things in the pipeline. Well, I don't know how. In the future, well, not the very close pipeline, but NIPT, non-invasive prenatal testing, and there's D for diagnosis, prenatal therapy, where you cure the baby in the womb. I'm part of that project at King's, and we're still recruiting. So if you have any men, again, we've done women. There are about 2 women here who took part in that, 2 service users who took part in that, different to the 2 that came up here. So please, if you know any men, contact me. It's just a questionnaire that they asked about what they feel about, that sort of thing. We're getting questions about university students contacting us, and 2 of them will come up here shortly. And from the focus groups, we're learning, there were 1 or 2 people, again in the preconception focus group, who wanted to know their partners. They want to make reproductive choices. They were traits, so they want to know what their partners are, and obviously that would be preconception. So there's a need or a for it. Yeah. So let's see. Okay. In 2008, now that's going back a bit, isn't it? I was with the society then. There was a conference, a residential conference in Greenwich, a nice hotel in Greenwich, 2 days. It was we had international speakers, or at the program, we invited international speakers. Some of those names you'll know, certainly Graham Surgeon, and even the lady from Bahrain, because she's pretty much at all these conferences. Charlotte was a lady in Ghana who I know who's been here, and she has an organization there, and they screen premaritally, in churches in Ghana, and she spoke about that at the conference and brought some of the forms they use. So again, that's, preconception. And it was the 5th of November, and look at what happened. Barack Obama was elected as president, and we were all up the night. I didn't sleep till 4 a.m. that night because we were watching the American elections, and the next day I remember Alison announcing it. Exactly. I wasn't the only one that didn't sleep, by the way, but we had it the next day, so that's the link. Okay, I've started having discussions with UCL medical students about raising awareness of preconception, targeting individuals at an early age, again, partners, if they both have the trait, what are their options? And, whilst it's important to obviously break down the stereotypes and all the stigma around sickle cell, and suggestions to do it also around World Sickle Cell Day, Newborn Screening Day, and Awareness. July is the UK Awareness Month. Now, a lot of people seem to celebrate the one in September, which is more the American one. Everybody's putting things up in September, and I say, look, UK has it in July, so you should be raising awareness about that. But I think 19th June takes over that. Once they've done World Sickle Cell Day on 19th, I think people think, okay, July, and then they wait till September or October for Black History Month. Yeah, so, and I'll now introduce you to Bimpe and Zenni, and they're going to come and do their presentation.
We're here to talk about sickle cell trait screening within the UK. First of all, we just want to say thank you to all the amazing talks. They've informed us unbelievable amounts, and thank you to Iyamide for inviting us to speak today and have this opportunity. So just a bit of background about us. As we said, we are fifth-year medical students at UCL, so one more year to go. And we've worked alongside each other on various projects throughout our time at university. We've worked in the African and Caribbean Society together for a year. We were co-members of the Equality, Diversity and Inclusivity team of the medical school. But by chance, last year, we'd both emailed Iyamide to talk about preconception screening and what we could do to better the process. And then we thought we'd just bring our work together in hopes to reach a very common goal.
So for me, I think with regards to medical school, my first clinical placement was actually in haematology. And from there, I already noticed the stark inequalities that a lot of patients with sickle cell disease actually face. And I remember coming back home from placement one day and being furious. And I thought there's something that needs to be done to help. And that basically just sort of sparked my interest in seeing what we can do to actually improve preconception screening for everyone.
Yep, and for me, the importance was the facts and statistics that you can find throughout any research that you do. So, as we all know, sickle cell disease is one of the most common genetic diseases in the world. And in the UK, it affects around 15,000 individuals, with 1 in 79 babies being born with sickle cell trait each year. And that prevalence is just increasing as we get more mixed-race families. And it was just interesting that a simple blood test could be the start of eradicating all of that. So that is just something that we should be doing and should be advocating for. So just to move forward, we're going on to areas of improvement.
So through our research, we've managed to speak to many different stakeholders. So we spoke to haematologists, people who actually have, who do live with sickle cell disease, and we spoke to just other people who are interested in advocacy and awareness. So we identified about 5 different areas that do need to improve. So we noticed that preconception screening does need to increase. Many people aren't necessarily aware of their status, and although since the early 2000s it has been increased in terms of the Hill Prick screening program, there is a generation of people who are of childbearing age who aren't entirely sure of their status. And then in terms of management of sickle cell patients, this is something that's stood out to me since the very beginning. In fact, a colleague of mine who's also in their 5th year of medical school, they mentioned that they had to challenge a doctor for basically under-prescribing analgesia for a child who was having a crisis. And it's actually been a lack of awareness with regards to how a crisis is an emergency. So we wanted to spread more awareness about how we can actually treat patients adequately when they do present. Thirdly is research with regards to sickle cell disease. We noticed that compared to other countries and just in general across the board, research is quite limited, even though there is some out there. And in terms of education surrounding sickle cell disease, that's also very, very important. And also disability support for sickle cell patients as well, because the condition can be very debilitating. And I feel that many employers, schools don't really understand how to best support individuals who do live with the condition. So these are the different areas that we thought need to improve.
So moving on to our area of focus. So as medical students, we wanted to do something that we can realistically and significantly impact in the short term with support of the sickle cell organisations and also advocates in the sickle cell field. So these are some areas that we identified in our area of focus, which would be preconception screening and what we feel like we can do to help and how this is important as well. So early detection, knowing whether someone carries the sickle cell trait can help identify individuals who may be at risk of passing that trait or passing the disease onto their children. We thought that family planning and informed decision making has been spoken about today, and they just go hand in hand. It helps individuals make informed decisions about their family in the future and what they can have in the future if they are planning to have a family, such as genetic counselling or pre-implantation genetic diagnosis and IVF, which you can get a free round of on the NHS, and I feel like people just don't know this information. We also talked about receiving results. From my own experience, I know that in my family, so my mother she has 4 children, she's completely forgotten the results of the heel prick test, except for my older sister, and she does have sickle cell trait, but she can't remember for the rest of me and my siblings. So I can imagine that experience is probably not even unique to me. So it's about individuals being able to access these results, as they might have different relationships with their parents where they can't even go and ask or have those conversations comfortably. Medical advice as well. As we all know, sickle cell trait is not asymptomatic. You can also have issues with just having sickle cell trait. So the knowledge of sickle cell trait status in yourself can help healthcare providers manage these patients more significantly, and also it empowers those with sickle cell trait to understand their healthcare better. And also advocacy and awareness. This whole situation would just raise awareness for sickle cell in itself. And also from speaking to older family members and friends from Nigeria as well, I found that they do have conversations when it comes to dating and that kind of thing about if someone does have sickle cell trait and how that will impact them in the future. This should also be happening here, just to normalize those conversations and make people feel more comfortable in having sickle cell trait. It's not something to be ashamed of at all. And we need to empower these people to keep having these conversations and normalize it.
So we essentially identified 4 main issues that we wanted to tackle with regards to preconception screening. So the first one being difficulty accessing the test, and this is something that I've actually also faced, barriers with regards to doing as well. So people have complained that they have struggled to get past their GP and they don't know other avenues in which to actually get tested. And other people are also unaware of the screening tests that do exist and how it works, and don't really know that it's actually quite a simple process to do. We also identified that people aren't always informed of the importance of knowing their sickle cell status and what this means if you are to have a child with sickle cell disease, and what this means in terms of complications as well. And another point that we really wanted to reiterate is that 45% of pregnancies are unplanned in the UK. So it's one thing having a partner, but oftentimes people don't often plan to get pregnant. So we wanted to make sure that people do start having these conversations beforehand, as early on as possible whilst they are dating, so that they can make informed decisions. And in the bottom, we actually included screenshots of how, on social media, there has been a lot of talk with regards to finding out your sickle cell trait status. So in the bottom left, you can see a video here of one lady. I believe she does have sickle cell disease, and she was talking about ways in which you can find out your genotype. And I think I've seen other videos where people have mentioned they have to go to quite extreme measures to get their GPs to listen to them, and it shouldn't really be that hard. And in the middle, we have a lady who found out she had the trait while she was pregnant, and she found out her partner also had the trait while she was pregnant. And she remembered being very alarmed by the fact that she could have taken steps beforehand to at least make this process a lot easier for both of them, and to also prevent their child being born with sickle cell disease. And that particular video got about 50,000 likes just by itself. So people are really, really interested. And in the comments, people are talking about, how do I get tested? How do I make informed decisions? What options are available? So these things are very, very important. And also in the bottom right, we can see a GP here. She's talking about 4 blood tests that you should be doing before you do get pregnant, before you try to conceive. And of course, knowing your sickle cell trait status was of course very, very important. So there is a lot of talk about these things. And I mean, we're on social media. A lot of people our age are on social media, and your age too, you know, they're on social media. And people do have these conversations all the time. I see it come up. So people are very, very interested in knowing their sickle cell trait status. They just don't know how to.
So from our research, we found that these were the current methods in trying to find out what your sickle cell status is. But what we found were the issues with these current methods. So as Bimpe just said, requesting from your GP, people were finding there was a lot of pushback with talking to your GP, or the GP just wasn't taking it as seriously as you hoped they would. In terms of visiting your local sickle cell centre or contacting a support organisation, people were just unsure how to do that. People are unaware, they're just not educated in how to access these services. And then also people were unaware of the genetic counselling that you can get. So even if they were aware of their sickle cell status, if they do carry the trait and their partner does, they're not even sure what to do with that information, whether it's that they can have pre-implantation diagnosis or have IVF and that kind of thing. So they're just basically at a standstill, which is obviously quite unfair. And then going on to the sickle cell screening pathway, as me and Bimpe were reading through this, as you can see, there are quite a few steps. Just looking through it, it also relies on knowing who the biological father is. As we've heard throughout the day, men just don't seem to want to be taken this seriously, so it's just like quite difficult. So we just thought that if a preconception screening was a thing, then it could avoid a lot of these steps, or at least reduce a lot of them and make it a lot easier. And this would also release quite a few pressures on the NHS, which we're also seeing are getting worse and worse as the days go on.
So just onto another initiative that myself and my friend Honey do. She's unable to make it today, but I'm going to speak of what we do. So essentially, we run this organisation called Black and Forth, where we basically support students during their time at medical school, but we also raise a lot of awareness with regards to different healthcare issues that would affect minority ethnic groups, especially amongst Black people. And in terms of this, we've actually done some sickle cell inheritance awareness and outreach. I only found out about sickle cell beta thalassemia disease 4 years into medical school, and I thought, why did it take so long for me to hear about this? And I made sure I asked everybody, do you guys know about this? And no one had a clue. So I thought this is information that needs to be shared. So around 55,000 people did see this video, and a lot of them did actually express in the comments saying, how do I get tested? How do I find out? And some people mentioned that, for example, I have a partner who's from the Mediterranean. I didn't know that potentially could have that trait. And irrespective of where your partner is from, I think it's important for everybody to know their status. So just to reiterate that, social media is a very valuable tool in terms of spreading information of how to get tested and the importance of getting tested.
So just bringing everything together, so we decided that our proposal in the short term and with the capabilities that we have as medical students, we want to utilise the centres and the current resources that we have to test people and see what their sickle cell status is. So we wanted our question to us STAMMAT members and other advocates of sickle cell, do you believe that you have the capacity and the resources to test as many people as possible? If things such as testing drives and community outreach to university, African and Caribbean societies was launched, which Bimpe will talk about just momentarily. And in the long term, we thought that from the research that we did, we looked at the national screening program criteria, and as Amanda has said, that they used kind of the Wilson and Younger criteria as a guide. Looking through those criteria, sickle cell trait testing fits every single one of those, and we just felt that in the long term that a screening program could be implemented, as it would reduce a lot of sickle cell patients further down the line in the future.
And something else that's really, really important is in terms of sharing information. It's great to have the resources out there, but if no one knows about it, it's essentially futile. So we want to use tools such as social media to do this, but that does run the risk of going viral, essentially. And we wanted to make sure that if we do share something like you can go to your local sickle cell centre to get tested, how many people would go at a time. So we just wanted to know how much capacity that would be available. And we also wanted to, share this information with different African Caribbean societies as well. They're dotted across London. I think it's important to actually speak to individuals at this age as well, as they are quite likely to think about having kids in the future, so that they know their sickle cell trait status, and they can start having these conversations with people around them as well. And as you mentioned, lastly, just potentially have testing drives to encourage people to get tested for sickle cell traits.
Thank you very much.
So I'm just going to talk for 5 minutes, Elizabeth, on preconception and thalassemia. So there were 8 people that we interviewed for in the focus group, and one thing that was quite shocking to us was that the people who were born out of the UK actually were more familiar with thalassemia than the ones who were born in the UK. And I should say it's shocking, but it's not at the same time. Lots of these young individuals knew of it because they saw something on TV. In Hong Kong, for example, there was a television program that really stuck with an individual throughout her whole life. And lots of them were quite sure because they recognized some of the symptoms and things. What they wanted to express was that these sort of testing should be implemented quite young in their life. So within 16 to 18 or 16 to 25, they thought that's when it should be happening. They should be educated about it in school. I don't think that will come as much of a surprise to everybody in this room. I'm stating the obvious. But they were, they felt that it's such a severe condition that it really should be spoken about more. And that's for both sickle cell and thalassemia. Sickle cell, everybody recognized the name, whether they understood what it was something, but thalassemia, for the ones that were born here, was completely new. And the first time they heard of the word was coming to us when they saw the advert that we published. So I think we need to do more things for the young couples pre-being told. And even with our parents, when they talked about finding out, they felt that finding out they had the trait when they were pregnant was too late. Because by then, they had already made the decision to have the baby. And it's very hard now to put that in context, to think you're going to terminate. So I think we need to do lots more. We do a lot of things on social media, because I'm trying to take the society into TikTok, nobody agrees. But we are trying to educate that way. And we've done a number of posts, and so what you guys are doing is phenomenal. I would beg you to also consider thalassemia and try to share it, because it's very similar. And I know there was a trend about the Pizza Hut and I don't know what it's called, Pizza Hut and Taco Bell thing, where people were talking about their genes. We did it in the society about inheriting their eye color and hair. We also talked about the thalassemia gene in that way, so I'm giving you more ideas. But I think I'll be happy if you want to work with us. We are more than willing to do that. And we try to do a lot on preconception, so we have a regular news. We have a regular radio spot now. In London, on London Greek Radio. I think Thursday's one of the slots, so in case anybody wants to listen to us brag about thalassemia for an hour, very welcome to. And we have this month, in May, sorry, it's International Thalassemia Day. And like the Sickle Cell Society and the Sickle Cell community we have 2 days, so we have, because I think if it's good, do it twice. So we have International Thalassemia Day on May 8th, and then we have National Thalassemia Day on October 19th. So for May, we have 3 events, I believe. One in Manchester, so it's a preconception event where people could come in and get tested for both thalassemia and sickle cell. So, and it's free for them. The society is meeting the cost. We also have one in London that's going to take place in Finchley, and there's also one to be held in Cardiff. All of these details are on our website and social media, so in case you are interested, you can find it or just contact one of those people. So we are doing lots more events. We're trying to get parents, so even with our social media campaigns, every single thing that we can jump on, Valentine's Day, we talked about blood donation, because obviously it's very important in our populations. We try to get on every sort of campaign that we can. I think thalassemia has such a small voice, which is why I'm so loud, because we need to multiply more of me, but I don't know if the world could cope with that. Because Carol, I know how you struggle. But we do need to raise our voice on thalassemia and educate people. So preconception is something very important to our society. I know it's not part of the program officially, but it really is something that we hold to us, because we believe parents should have all the information that they should, that is available to them to make a decision. We support them through whatever decision they do make, but having that informed choice, every human being should have it. And I tell them, you shouldn't play with chance. This is not a lottery ticket. You have this information. So I would urge all of you to please also support thalassemia, and anything that you need our help, we are very contactable. We practically live doing this. So please feel free to connect with us.